Well, folks, the Manosphere is not sending out their best representatives of the movement. I mean, Pearly Things, Pearl Davis, you know, a lot of people have covered this girl. Brittany Vince's done a lot of great videos on her. H3 had her on recently, and we're going to be taking a look at a segment that he completely owned her on. And you guys might be thinking, like, it's very unusual to hear me, you know, praise Ethan Klein, right? Because I've covered him for years, and I've covered, you know, how he lies, how he's dishonest and everything. I have to give him some props, though, because I am honest, right? He completely destroyed her in this interview, and she's been getting a lot of negative attention for this tweet she made the other day. She likes to attention bait a lot on Twitter, and now I guess she's pretending to be a pedophile for attention. I hope pretending.
I hope so. Hope this is bait. Well, she deleted it, so clearly she had some shame, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really, you know, I tweeted this on my account. I don't really understand the whole point of, like, attention baiting by pretending to be a pedophile, but then deleting it later. I mean, even Mr. Girl was like, oh, amateur over here, right? Like, even he was just like, yeah, she's not cut out for the game of being a pedophile attention
bait. Either this shouldn't have happened at all or should have stayed up. I mean, deleting it is just, I mean, come on.
So she tweeted, 16-year-old chicks are hotter than 26-year-old chicks.
But she's 26, by the way, so she's also, like, self-degrading, too.
Yeah, so she's self-owning herself for no reason and also being a pedophile. I mean, it's just like, what the fuck is this take right here?
Yeah.
Now, you know, she subscribes to a lot of Manosphere ideas, some of which I think are reasonable and truthful, and others I think are just retarded. A lot of these Manosphere people, you know, they try to come at it from a sort of religious point of view, and for those people, I kind of agree with them, but then other people come at it from a more worldly point of view. Her whole ideology of, like, high-value man versus high-value woman, and what makes a high-value man, just gets completely shattered by Ethan Klein. Somehow this guy just sends her to school, and he's like the dumbest man who has a podcast.
Yeah.
You know?
And the way that he absolutely shattered her is just asking how it applies in her own life.
Just asking her basic questions and putting her as the example. She completely melts down and doesn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen.
How can somebody who's older and not a virgin and less valuable, how can they get in a relationship with a man and not think they're a loser? Because if you're a low-value woman, then in a sense, you be judging the guy who's quote-unquote settling for you because he...
Now, Pearl's worldview, of course, you know, Pearl's not a virgin. She's 26, you know, her looks, you know...
They're pretty...
I don't want to be mean or anything, but, you know, let's just be honest here. You know, she's not a high-value woman by her own metrics just for the virginity thing alone. Right? So Ethan's putting her own morals to the test, okay, well, if you're, by your own definition, a low-value woman, how will you attract a high-value man? You won't, right? So what are you going to do?
Couldn't get a higher-value woman. So in a sense, a guy that you would settle for would be a loser by your own metrics. Low value.
Well, what are men supposed to do? 95% of women aren't virgins on their wedding days. You could be a multi-millionaire and not get a virgin.
How do you?
I think that's why you see more men walking away from relationships.
No. How do you enter a relationship and not think that he's a loser because he's low value?
I don't really know how to answer that question.
What?
But
that's a basic question, though. How's she not thought about getting asked this before?
Yeah. Well, here's the reason that she can't answer it is because it kind of breaks her whole worldview of, like, value, like, kind of down. Because the answer to that question is, well, I'm really just kind of average, and I would just date an average man, and I would be content with that. But then that breaks apart the whole idea of there's high-value men and low-value men, and you're a low value unless you subscribe to our program and follow the red pill. Then that's how you switch from one side to the other.
Yeah.
It's really a lot more nuanced than that, but she can't, for some reason, her brain is not able to connect that that's why she's getting owned here. She just breaks down.
Yeah, she breaks down and stuff, and it kind of exposes her worldview too, because it is very worldly to look at things. Like, look at people as like, you're either a 2 or you're a 10, and there's no way to change, right? Because if there's no way to change and you're fucked from the start, why even believe in this whatsoever, right? People that are religious, you know, like in most religions, obviously, if you start as a sinful person, there is a path to redemption, so you can change and become somebody that represents, you know, good moral character and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
In the red pill world, you know, if they don't believe in religion, then their worldview just doesn't make any sense. You're either shit or you're not, right? Like, because Pearl lived a life of sin, you know, she had sex before marriage, now she's just fucked forever, right? Like, how can you even subscribe to these views? They're just so, like, black and white and just stupid.
Yeah, and that's why Ethan is pressing her with a very simple question of like, well, if this is your view, then isn't the guy that you settle for, like, he's not able to pull bitches, like he can't get women, so he's obviously a loser, right? Because he's settling for your loser ass. And then she's like, fuck.
Yeah, it gets
It's
way
not like
worse.
that. Yeah.
Let's keep listening.
Right? Because in a sense, only a low value man, and I'm sorry, I'm only framing this in your worldview. Let's say a medium value man would decide to settle on somebody like you who's a little bit older, not as fertile. You are not a virgin. And also, I'll tell you something else. You like being in the foreground, which is not good for traditional marriages.
Right.
I mean,
Women are supposed to be subservient and quiet, not YouTubers with 1 million subscribers preaching every day. That's a very masculine trait, right? So again, that also demolishes her view of things.
Yeah.
he's looking for someone who wants to build a home. You don't know how to cook
Yeah,
either.
I don't expect to be with like a high value guy. I think that's silly.
Okay. What's your
like when I think of high value, I think of like top 5% of men.
So what value do you think
Very-
you'll be settling on in your own personal life?
What value will
Yeah.
I be settling on in my
What
personal
man do you think is reasonable for you to pursue?
I just kind of, I think that's a bit of a inappropriate like question. But
What?
What the fuck?
Are you serious? All this girl does is talk about like the value of women, the value of the men they attract, the value of men and relationships. And the moment that Klein presses her
She
about
just breaks
herself,
down.
it's inappropriate now.
Yeah, why is it an inappropriate question to ask? It's actually very reasonable. It's like, this is your entire worldview. Let's put it to test using you as the example. But somehow she's never thought about this question. She's never even anticipated being asked this on other shows. And it kind of goes to show, right? It's like, when your whole internet presence is just tweeting stuff like simple stuff for rage bait, for attention, right? Stuff like this, right? It makes sense to do this on Twitter. Like, you can go on Twitter and you can be like, 16-year-olds are hotter than 26-year-olds, right? And you can tweet that, close the app, not even think about it, not even have to respond to it or whatever. But if you are to take these radical ideas to a podcast and somebody is to give you just simple pressing on the topic, like, okay, well, break this down a little bit. Why do you think 16-year-olds are hotter than 26-year-olds? And suddenly she's like, I don't know. I've never thought about this. It's like, well, should you really be preaching these values at all? Because it seems like you haven't thought about shit.
Yeah. I mean, she's not sitting there like, she didn't have the answer ready where she's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Because that would mean that she's thought about it, but she's just, that's like something she's already decided she's not going to do.
Yeah.
She's decided, I'm not going to talk about my personal life. Instead, she's like, man, like she's never heard or thought of this concept at all in her life. So it's like not even like she has laid this out and this is like a boundary, quote unquote, for her like YouTube like ideology. It's just, she's literally just never thought of it.
No, she's never thought of it, right? And if you're going to grift and preach all of these, like, you know, set positions on your channel every fucking day, then you should probably make sure you are a good enough representative of those values. Otherwise, you're going to look like a jackass, right?
Yeah.
It's like if I was running a fucking bodybuilding channel. It wouldn't make any sense. It'd be like, what?
What are you talking about?
Why are you here? It's like,
Yeah.
It's interesting because you spend like all day talking about this stuff. I find that it's really interesting to have you and put this analysis into use. Why is it
because the way
inappropriate?
you're framing the question is a bit disingenuous.
How?
I think most women in, you know,
How is it disingenuous?
Yeah, I think it's a bit disingenuous.
Why?
Okay.
Wow.
why?
Why? Why is it disingenuous? I'm analyzing your viability by your own metrics, which you do all day to other women and men. Why is that disingenuous?
I don't.
Really?
She's got nothing.
She's floored.
Like, I think it's fair to say, because you...
She's sitting in silence where he has to respond to like fill the air because she's just staring at the camera.
Yeah, and Ethan is not a smart guy. I mean, I've seen this guy make an ass of himself multiple times on his own show, all the time actually. But somehow he's able to very simply and honestly very well done. He's able to expose how shallow her mind really is.
Yeah, I mean, with just 2 simple questions.
Yeah.
We're talking to women about expectations and men about expectations based on their value. I think it's fair to say, okay, well, what's your value of man you're looking for based on your own,
What's my value to a guy that I'm looking for?
No. What value of man?
I wish I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I wish I was a virgin. You know, I should have waited.
No.
Like, I don't know what.
And now she's taking it personally. Like, she thinks that the way that he's asking this question is like, so why were you a loser and did all these sins and had sex for marriage and all that stuff? That's not even what he's asking. She's like getting offended. Like, I mean, I wish I was a virgin and I wish I was high value.
Yeah.
No, how about you answer the question of, in your current state, what does this mean for your worldview?
Yeah, exactly. And again, if she was religious, then she would say there's a path to redemption or whatever, right? But I mean, maybe she is, but I don't really see her talk about that much. And certainly the arguments she's making right now don't come from that perspective.
No.
It comes from this like worldly perspective of, again, you're either a 2 or you're a 10, which is just, I mean, it just doesn't really, it's not a good mindset to have, especially if you're going to go on these shows and get pressed on it, right? This is stuff you tweet out for bait and then, again, close your computer and just walk away or something.
Yeah.
When you're on a show having a real conversation with somebody, you just look like an idiot.
Yeah, and she had an even worse take with divorce as well. Like, I want to talk about that one too.
Oh, should we go play that?
Yeah, that one.
This one was a
really
good
bad.
one. This really shows how incompetent she is. She didn't just mess up for one. We're not just cherry picking the podcast. Like, oh, here's the one moment where she got owned.
No.
Nope, she got owned as well when she flat out said that divorce should be banned and then immediately conceded.
Yeah.
Actually, I think we should ban divorce too. Yeah, I think that should be banned. Yes.
Okay, well, that's a little bit silly. You have to acknowledge that, right?
No.
So banning divorce means that when you decide to get married, you are not allowed by the government to leave your significant other in any situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think that if you want to leave, you just shouldn't get married. So that's just my opinion.
Right, but like in the real world, that kind of simplistic.
And you know, there's like exceptions to this, but I would just say in general, for most cases, you know.
So if you want to leave, you just shouldn't get married. If you marry somebody and they start beating your ass or something like that, they start going crazy, they have a psychotic episode, or they just change and become like hostile to your environment or your life or even your kids, you know, you're just fucked. You know, you shouldn't have gotten married. You should have predicted that this would have happened, right? It's like, what are we talking about here?
I mean, it's a super simplistic mindset. She already immediately brings up its exceptions, which she's going to go even more into.
Right.
We could talk about exceptions, but like the rule.
Well, the exceptions are the important part, because I've heard you say that a lot when you're talking about things. You say, oh, you want to talk about exceptions, but the exceptions is the important part, because those are the people that are going to be affected. I mean,
if it's one-sided physically abusive, okay, fine, divorce. We can allow divorce for those exceptions, but
okay. So how do you prove the one? So then you don't believe in forced divorce? Or I mean, you ban divorce.
Fine. Yeah. Ban divorce except for one-sided abuse.
Okay, sure. Except for one-sided abuse. And is there going to be a system to kind of how do you prove that the woman or man was on the?
I think you have to press charges in criminal court, not family court.
So only if your significant other is tried criminally are you allowed to leave the relationship. Yes. Tried and found guilty criminally.
Yes.
Wow.
Otherwise, just stick out of, which is fine if you don't, want to be with someone forever. But I just say stay out of marriage. I actually don't see a point in getting married with the way that marriage is today, to be honest. Yeah, because again, like, what is it? The average marriage is like 8 years. So the average marriage is 8 years and you're done. That's not marriage.
So there's just so much to unpack there right at the end. I mean, her last point, right? Like, I just don't really think marriage actually means that much at all, right? You're making a critique of marriage and making a moral argument that people should be in fruitful, happy marriages. But then you're like, well, actually, marriage is kind of shit nowadays. Most people get divorced anyway, so fuck it all, I guess, right? But then her other point that we should ban divorce, immediately she concedes on that. And when you really break down what her actual position is, once you beat her down with all of these exceptions or whatever, is that people shouldn't get divorced for stupid reasons.
Right.
Which is something I'm sure most people would agree with.
I mean, that's common sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless your ass is getting beat. If you just want to get divorced for the fuck of it, you just are bored now. That's wrong.
Yes, that is wrong. And I think everyone
We agree.
Generally, people can agree with
That's
that.
not really a profound take. That's not even really a red-pilled, truth-telling take. I mean, most people agree with this. It's like...
Yeah. Well, you know what's so funny about this is I can tell, too, that she's doing this for attention because when you hear her voice, if you go back to the very beginning of this clip, hear the way that she says it. She's like smiling when she says it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Oh, actually, I think we should ban divorce, too. Yeah, I think that should be banned. Yes.
Okay,
You
well
hear her
that's a little
smiling?
bit
She smiled
silly
at me.
to
And look, when she
acknowledge
says
that
no, she's
part.
like, no, like a little kid. Watch.
No.
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 Look at her, dude.
She's attention baiting, and then she gets pressed, and then she's like, oh, well, it's actually kind of like this, isn't it? Really?
So she's just wasting your time. That's all of her content is. It's just a waste of your time. She'll present this, at least, like guys like Andrew Tate, even fucking Sneeko, okay, even that guy, are a little bit more fucking clever at presenting something and not just immediately shitting their pants, right? And wasting your fucking time. They're able to, like, respond to the most obvious criticisms. Like, they're able to, for the most part, hold it together, usually, right? But Pearl, it's like she just gives you something and you're like, well, that's kind of retarded. And then she folds in a minute. It's like, okay, well, why are you talking to me?
Yeah. Like, I think Sneeko is every day talking to people who disagree with him every day.
Yeah.
And then we usually can find, like, some clips where he's, like, an idiot.
Right.
But every time I've seen Pearl talk to people she disagrees with, unless it's just literally just brain dead, like, whore women who have no idea what's going on in the world, she loses. The only people I've ever seen her, like, beat is just, like, the whatever podcast girls.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like-
And that's a common theme with all of these manosphere people. It's like, most of the people they're used to debating are like college kids or whores just off the street that aren't like even podcasters. They have no interest. They're literally just there for attention. They're getting paid or something like that, right? So it's easy to own them. They're basically paid to get owned.
Yeah.
But then when you have a conversation with anybody, whether you're talking to Destiny, who's a professional debater, or dumbass Ethan Klein, you better have some basic responses prepared. Otherwise, you're just going to fold. And people are going to see through like this thin veil of like, oh, I'm such a thought-provoking, leader. It's like, well,
not really. If you can just bring a bunch of like women on your podcast and be like, what kind of man do you want to date? And they say, I want to date someone who has a $500,000 a year, and you can laugh at them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, actually, let's do something more meaningful and not just do that every day for 5 months straight. Then you're stomped.
Exactly.
Then it's over.